Welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here. My name is Ross. I am a Wels pastor. So today, my presentation, I was asked to be here and to do this topic. And I'm excited to be here. I'm excited that we get to have conversations, to talk. I know at a synodical level, our leaderships from the LCMS and the Wels for the past about 3 years have been getting together for informal talks. That is great, but also it has to happen at this level too, or at the pastors or the boots on the ground level. I think when you recognize the synodical leaders, they know inherently that everyone's eyes are on them, right? And so you have to definitely act a certain way and make sure that you're representing your synod as a whole, and not that we don't do that, but I think we can maybe be more personal when we're talking church to church, pastor to pastor. It's a little bit different of a feel that way. So my hope today is to introduce myself. I'm assuming not too many people here know me, just so you know my background. Being a Wels pastor doesn't make me an expert on the LCMS by any means. I do, yeah, right. So that's why I did really want to make sure this is very clear before I begin, that one, this is just a Wels pastor's perspective. This is not the Wels perspective. And just so everyone watching too, if anyone from the synod sees this is not the Wels perspective. And also, these are just generalizations, observations based on conversations I've had and experiences I've had. So, and if I'm off on some of the things I talk about, maybe you'll correct me. Maybe you'll have different experiences or perceptions. So please do that and let me know. I'll go through my presentation. It'll be really kind of quick. I do want to have time at the end for you guys. If you're like, hey, I've never had a Wels pastor in a room locked in for a certain amount of time to ask them questions because I want to know what's going on in the Wels or what they're up to or what they believe or teach. Well, I'll be that for you for hopefully like 10, 15 minutes or more. So let's go through this, and then any questions you might have at the end, please, or if there's corrections, go through that with too. So first, just me. Who is Rev Ross? First and foremost, baptized child of God, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. Maybe that's a no-brainer, but that's who I am, first and foremost. Before you talk about vocations of I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a pastor, we all, at the end of the day, whether we have Wels or LCMS or a different Lutheran behind our name even, we can say I'm a child of God, redeemed by the blood of the Lamb. That's a great thing. I am a husband to Laura Gottschalk for 9 years. This August is our 9-year anniversary. Father of 3 beautiful but rambunctious boys. 2 of them are out of the womb. 1 of them is currently in the womb still. So 3 boys, because he's alive, and he is someone for who Jesus died for as well. Pastor of St. Paul's Evangelical Lutheran Church and School, along with our district president. Technically, for the Wels, this is the Michigan district. So we're in the Michigan. We have less districts than you guys do. We're a lot smaller. Keep that in mind. So the district president of our district is over at St. Paul's as well. So I'm his associate. He has a lot of duties that take him off campus or elsewhere in the district, going up from Michigan, Ohio, into Pennsylvania a little bit too. So I'm full-time there. I've been there for 3 years. This is my first call out of the seminary, is here. I had never set foot in Ohio before receiving the call. Now here I am 3 years later. I don't know if this works here. OH! Okay, it does work. So that, I guess that goes across synodical borders of that one. And then non-family life, that's kind of low down there. So currently I'm pursuing an STM, which is another master's degree that pastors can go for. I practice BJJ, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, on a regular basis. I like working out outside of just Jiu-Jitsu and also music. So I play guitar and sing at St. Paul's a little bit too. My wife is a much better musician than I am, but I try to keep up. So there's some pictures so you can see me and go, ah, that I have babies and stuff. So right in the middle, that's my family. This is from this past Easter. You can see all the white there from the stole and everything. Laura, obviously my wife. Gabrielle is our youngest, was our youngest. Then Raphael is a little older. 3, 1, and then the next one is due in end of October, early November. So that's when our 3rd one is due. This is my brother over here, Pastor Sims. He's the district president. Just a joy and a privilege to be able to learn from him. He has about 36 years in the ministry right now. I've been blessed to just be able to walk across the hall and talk to someone who's been in the ministry for 30 plus years. Like, hey, what do you think about this? How do we do this? That's been a great blessing. And also jiu-jitsu down over there. I also have a dog that's Lutheran. So that's kind of me. All right, a little bit of my history, just to go through some things. I think this may add a little bit of quote-unquote experience or credibility. So my history of faith and education. So I attended a Wels grade school, and I attended a Wels church that is no longer part of the Wels. So the church that I went to when I was kind of grade school into high school, they actually left the synod. Essentially what happened is the pastor was asked by our synod to re-go through some preaching training and to not use other sermons or formats that were being used by other pastors. And there was a little bit of butting heads. And it came down to this, that that pastor said, I'm just going to leave the Wels. And the church said, okay, we'll go with you. And so that church was definitely a different experience for me as far as non-liturgical church. But the grade school I went to was more traditional and liturgical as far as that goes. Then I worked for a long time. Well, that's the church right there. Hope Lake Country is what it's called now. Camp Phillip, I worked there for a long time. I was a camper there. That's a Wels campground in Wautoma, Wisconsin. So met my wife there. I was in 5th grade. She was in 6th grade. I loved her from then on, but she did not love me. Took a little bit of time. I played the long game. So gentlemen, play the long game. It can work out. And I attended a Missouri Synod high school, Lake Country Lutheran High School, which is part of, used to be association of 3 schools. They actually have 5 now, 2 grade schools and 3 high schools. So the high school I went to was associated with the LCMS. It was right down the road. Like, if you can imagine driving out of my house, you get on the main kind of highway, state highway that was there. 1 exit down was Lake Country Lutheran. So that's where I played football, attended high school. A lot of my friends were there. And then growing up even longer, I went to Martin Luther College. So that's the Wels College of Ministry. So if you want to be a pastor or a teacher or a deacon or a deaconess and get a degree for doing that, you go to Martin Luther College. That's in New Ulm, Minnesota. So I went 4 years there in our pre-seminary program. Then for a while, I worked at Lighthouse Youth Center in Milwaukee. That's Wels Youth Center, that's in the Milwaukee-ish area, now Appleton in Wisconsin, that helps serve after-school programs and during the summer for inner-city youth. Did that for a couple of years. And then I'm wearing this polo today that I attended Wisconsin Lutheran Seminary, which is in Mequon, Wisconsin. That's the Wels Seminary for 4 years. And just tagging on there that I vicared in Anchorage, Alaska. So that's where I got to vicar. A lot of military stuff going on up there too, J-Bear and other bases. So I got to have a little bit of an experience with that my vicar year. So that's me. That's just me and my background a little bit. I did have a classmate of mine who actually continued on in the LCMS pastoral track. So we were step for step throughout our entire kind of college and then seminary careers. He went to Concordia, Chicago for his undergrad stuff, and then went to St. Louis Seminary. So it's been interesting to be able to talk with him throughout kind of that time and say, hey, what are you learning? What are you guys talking about? Here's what I'm doing. Then let's just, on paper, talk about this, because maybe some people don't know it. This is the best that I understand it to be of what separates us now doctrinally. And I want to be very clear that that is what separates church bodies is doctrine, not application or necessarily certain practices or cultural things. So, for example, maybe we use different names for things. Well, that's not going to separate us. It's doctrine. It's the truth that we confess. So really quick, I'm going to go through these, and if there's any other pastors in the room who think you don't got the LCMS right, please let me know. I think I do. I think I've talked with a few pastors. So if not, you can correct me at the end. But go through this quick just so we can get a hold of this. So the first thing, church and ministry, and here's how I would summarize it. The Wels would say that the Lord started the public ministry of the gospel, and then off of that public ministry of the gospel, you can call teachers, deacons or deaconesses, pastors, Sunday school teachers, etc. Or I think on paper the LCMS would confess that the divinely instituted office is the pastoral office, and then supporting that would be teachers, deacons, Sunday school teachers. So this is number one. and maybe this doesn't make sense, you can ask at the end too, come back to it. That's number one, church and ministry. So what is the divinely instituted form of public ministry? We would say in the Wels, there is this bubble that is the public ministry of the gospel, and off of that are the different stations like pastor, teacher, etc. Then you have the LCMS there. Next one, men and women, comes up a little bit, I know. I tried to put this together, how I would summarize it, and correct me if I'm wrong, please, we can talk about it. The LCMS, when it comes to women and what it means to have authority over a man, which is kind of what this comes down to, is much more centered on the pastoral office. So no women ordination, no women kind of doing that preaching and teaching. So for example, and this is another one, correct me if I'm wrong, where we would differ is for women serving as maybe like a congregational president, where LCMS would say in general that can be true, as long as those functions have nothing to do with a pastoral type of office. Is that kind of fair? And we would say in the Wels, no. So no elected positions like board of elders, serving as like a president of a congregation. Now, I guess it would depend on your constitution how those things line up. But in general, looking at that, women voting in congregational meetings, this is maybe more of the stereotypical one. LCMS, I believe, would say yes. And then the Wels would say no. This is one where I just don't like congregational voting, because the principle in Scripture is not congregational voting. The principle in Scripture we're talking about is authority. So is every vote authoritative? Absolutely not. If you are voting on, hey, what color do we want the next carpet to be? Well, now we're in a congregational meeting and women can't vote on that. Well, where is their authority? So this is not talking about the Wels position. You're not having authority over a man or anything like that. So voting isn't the principle, it's authority that is. And what the Wels has essentially done is said, in general, in a congregational meeting, let's just not take the time to say, okay, this vote has authority, this vote, which is now like we're voting for our next pastor, there's authority there. So that you can't vote on that one, you can vote on this one. You kind of make the blanket statement of, okay, well, women, we'll ask you just not to vote so that there's no confusion. So that's there. And then the last one, it's on the bottom, maybe you can't see it. It says women teaching men in public doctrinal settings is how I worded it. Essentially, what I wanted to touch with this one, when I went to high school at Lake Country Lutheran, female teachers would give chapel. In the Wels, at a Wels high school, that wouldn't happen. So I don't know if that one is like universal, if that was my high school, or how that would go. You guys can talk about that maybe with your pastors later, but that was my experience, again. My experience at the LCMS high school that I went to, that happened. I don't know. Take that as you will. Last one, real quick, comes down to essentially prayer fellowship. On paper, altar and pulpit fellowship. So if I came to Zion, let me ask you this. If I came to Zion, would Pastor Hermoic, did I pronounce that right? Would he commune me? No, and vice versa, we wouldn't, because we altar and pulpit fellowship, we're on the same page confessionally on paper. Where it differs is then prayer. So the Wels teaches this as a unit concept. So we take all of Scripture as a unit. So if we are going to engage in public worship with another group, we have to have complete or a unit doctrinal confession. And then part of that is that we view prayer as an act of public worship. So for example, let's say St. Paul's had a softball team, and we're going to go play softball in some church league, and then they wanted to pray before the softball games. We would respectfully not join into the prayer. We'd stand there and be respectful. We wouldn't be saying boo or la 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 during that or anything. But we would not join in that public act of worship. Whereas I think in general, prayer fellowship, as far as the LCMS goes on paper, does not require full doctrinal unity. So maybe that LCMS team would engage in that pregame prayer. Again, public act of worship. Those might be kind of too small. So we'll just keep going on. And then you can ask questions of me or the other pastors in the room. Put you guys on the spot too, since you're also very smart. So here's what I think what Pastor Himmel kind of wanted me to talk about is, what is the Wels perception of the LCMS, and what would we, as the Wels, love to see? So I'll summarize it this way. The LCMS is big, with a unique history and culture. That's a huge difference between the Wels and the LCMS. You're more than 3 times our size as far as people. Is it 1.4 million? You guys know? Ish. It's over 1 million. We're in the 300,000s in the continental United States. Obviously, you take world missions and people you're in fellowship with or helping out. That's different, but it's a huge difference. So what does that mean for the LCMS? You guys got a way larger reach. You think about this. You take every Wels member, and you think about the communities that they're a part of, the people that they have interactions with that are non-churched. And now imagine that as a web, a connection web of where we can go. By nature of the size of the LCMS, your web is so much bigger and probably more global than the Wels will ever be. And that's a huge blessing. Another blessing, and this one is one that benefits a lot of people, better publications. CPH, which is Concordia Publishing House, kicks, maybe I shouldn't say this, it does way more than NPH, Northwestern Publishing House, which is the Wels Publishing House. If you were to go into my office and see the books, I do have stuff that's published by the Wels for sure, but I got the Big Blue Commentary series. If you guys see those ones at all. When you think about, and it goes to the next one too, more scholars, who is confessional Lutheran and publishing on a big scale is more the LCMS than the Wels for sure. I think we have two authors in this series that are Wels. The rest are not. And I think that's a testimony to the scholarship that the LCMS is able to have, being bigger, having bigger seminaries. Another part of this too was I cannot get a doctorate in ministry or a PhD from my seminary. I can't do that. No one has a doctorate from a Wels seminary because we don't offer that. You guys do. And maybe other pastors go to different seminaries and stuff, but just keep that in mind. Another good thing, I love Flame. I don't know if you guys know who Flame is, but he is a LCMS member. He was a Calvinist for a long time, then came into contact with confessional Lutheran thought, went back to Concordia St. Louis. He's currently working on a PhD right now, but he's a wordsmith. So he's a rapper. I use him in class though too, because some of the way that he's just able to put doctrinal truths is just so memorable. It's like one that sticks with me that I use often in class. He talks about how baptism is like irrigation, delivering grace and salvation. Someone knew it. Someone just said it. Who was that? Was that you? So just the way he's able to wordsmith and put things into spoken word form and have it just be ingrained in your memory, huge blessing. The bad, lack of unity in doctrine and practice. Example, communion. So again, this is just from what I hear, is that and I actually had a former member of St. Paul's who went to a Missouri Synod church in Louisiana, and he talked to that pastor, and the pastor said, yeah, come on up to the Lord's Supper. Well, that's no longer close communion, as I say we, as I think the churches, at least from what I've heard, would confess it to be. So that's something that is, in the Wels, I guess I've never heard of that. I think partially what makes that more difficult, I guess history, there's things that play into it. But also when you're talking about a synod of 300,000 versus a synod of 1.5 million, it's harder to keep that unity. And I guess, I don't want to say police it, but in a brotherly love, it's a form of that, well, how do we discipline, how do we keep that for the good of our confession, for the good of the faith of our people, right? This is the other thing that I've heard in conversation with different pastors. I've heard from maybe my seminary professors who have taken classes at like St. Louis or Fort Wayne, is it seems like there is a larger and fiercer division in the LCMS over, I guess, things like adiaphora or liturgical worship versus non-liturgical worship. I kind of put a number line down there. You can see the Wels cross and the Missouri Synod crosses there. And that's kind of how I would put it when I talk about this division. It's not like in the Wels we don't have people who have different ideas or preferences. There are liturgical guys in the Wels, and there are people, or pastors we'll say, who are doing very non-liturgical style of worship in church. But I would say the fierceness and the divide is just not quite as large, whereas I've heard people in the LCMS, it's like very far on this spectrum of division. And in all of this, again, just going back to what I've heard, and maybe some of the pastors, again, you can talk to your pastors or the other LCMS pastors in the room and let them be the experts on the LCMS. That's just what I have heard and perceived. I've heard comments made or secondhand conversations, I guess I would put it, have come to me, and I've thought to myself, I just don't think that would happen in my synod. I don't think that the way that those pastors are talking to each other or are divided over an issue like liturgical worship, which is important, good to talk about, I don't think the fierceness of the division would be there.
Would you also?
No. So I think that pretty much is. Let me just end with this, and then please hold your question. What would the Wels love? And I guess this is what one Wels pastor would love. I think this is true for the synod, though. There was kind of as I talked with Pastor Hermowick, thank you. I'm sorry, brother. Hermowick, before, there was kind of this maybe idea that the perception from what he has heard is that the Wels just doesn't want fellowship anymore. I really do not think that's the case. I do think the Wels would think it is awesome to be in fellowship with the LCMS again. What I think we need before that talk can actually happen formally is to talk to a synod that is more united. I couldn't imagine actually talking true fellowship if the LCMS still has churches that are practicing what is essentially open communion. I couldn't,
When you say united in that first book, is that united within Missouri Synod?
Yes.
Is it united between Wels and LCMS?
Internal. Yeah, LCMS. So, the example that comes to mind, the example par excellence there is just that communion practice. Something like that. Maybe there's others, but that's the one that just sticks in my mind that's easy to put out there. The other thing that I would love is that we mutually encourage, study, and pray for one another as small bastions of confessional Lutheranism in America. And I say small, not to put anyone down, but I think you think about the Christian church in America, we are a small part of that. We're a small part of that. And you think about Lutheranism in America, how much of Lutheranism can you say is confessional now? Synod-wise, I would love to say the Wels. I would love to say the LCMS. Maybe there's smaller ones like the ELS, who were the Wels in Fellowship, the CLC. There's others, I suppose, but man, when I say small bastions, I really think that we should view ourselves as bastions of confessional Lutheranism. And one thing, I didn't put this on there, but I do think that the LCMS and the pastors I've spoken to in the LCMS are much more versed in the confessional writings than we are in the Wels. So maybe that's a good thing. Pastor Hermowick, Pastor H. Hermowick, in the talks that we've had, and this is not to build up his ego, but we'll be talking and he'll kind of just rattle off, oh yeah, that's Augsburg 14. I'm like, oh, I would have to go to the appendix to get that. So kudos on that, because it's good to be confessional Lutheran. That's what we love to be. So that's my thoughts, is we can still be, I think the word you used in the opening is fraternal, right? Maybe we don't share in full doctrinal unity and fellowship. That does not mean we cannot love and support one another. Doesn't mean we can't pray for one another, or even just meet and talk and realize that at the end of the day, we are redeemed children of God, and we are small bastions in confessional Lutheranism here in America, and I suppose the world, you could say at that point too, right? At one point it was Germany, but probably not anymore for confessional Lutheranism. That is a lot of stuff I just said at you, and I know that that's tough. So questions. What do you have? Questions for me? Things you want clarity on? That you want to boo me or something like that, or whatever it was? No, I'm just kidding.
You nailed a lot.
Yeah.
I think you did. Looking at that one,
Do you want to go back?
question about your perspective on
Here?
the arrow down there. So do you feel that the spectrum of, let's say, liturgical worship, for example, do you feel the spectrum is just more broad, like high church is higher and contemporary worship is more contemporary? Or are you saying the split is or both?
I think it's a little bit of both. I do think, in general, I have heard more higher church stuff in the Missouri Synod. And to be fair, I want to put this out there maybe too, that I am not probably the typical Wels pastor. Like I wear sandals on a regular basis. Like as far as stuff like that goes, maybe I'm not the most typical. You saw where I grew up going to church, not the liturgical church. St. Paul's is. We're a liturgical church over there, and I love liturgical worship. But I think there is a more high churchness in the LCMS that I've seen and heard. Maybe not seen as much as heard. I can't really talk to the other end of that one, contemporary-wise. I guess I don't know as much. But more so, it was the fierceness. I've just... I secondhand heard a story. I'm not going to say any names, and rebuke me if I'm breaking the 8th commandment. I heard a story from a professor of mine who was taking classes, and there was some communion service, and one of the LCMS people that was there at this service said, I'm not going to take communion because I know this other LCMS person is up there too, and I can't commune with them because of their stance on something. And that was like, wow, I just couldn't imagine that happening in the Wels as much. I haven't heard of that. So that's what I meant by fierceness. And again, I can't talk specifics, but that's one of the things that made me think, that is a fierce division if you have someone who, on paper, is in your confession, you're saying, I just can't right now. Maybe that was just an interpersonal thing. I don't know. But that's what I meant.
Yeah, because it's interesting how you worded, because those who might be more high church traditional, whatever you call it,
Sure.
would say that liturgical worship is not adiaphora.
Okay.
Whereas contemporary worship would say liturgical worship is adiaphora. Contemporary is adiaphora, so therefore we have more freedom in liturgy.
Sure.
So it's interesting, that's actually what's currently part of what's dividing.
Okay.
The adiaphora.
Okay. Interesting. Yeah.
You nailed it.
That's interesting to put it that way. Is it adiaphora or not? Where I think that debate probably isn't as much happening in the Wels. I think the professors I've had, he's sainted now, but he would say, I will defend your right to non-liturgical worship, your right to worship non-liturgically to my dying breath, but I will never do it myself. Or you know what I mean? I'll never support it, but I'll defend your right to do it to my dying breath, but I'm not going to tell you to do it or say that's the best way to do things.
One of the things people forget too is we were together from 1870.
Yeah, until 62.
90 years. And all the pastors interchanged names, Gottschalk. I went to school with Gottschalk and so on.
They're probably really cool. Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah, I imagine. I'm really curious. In your, I have Seneca on my shelf, the German of it.
Okay.
Do you guys still use Seneca as your dogmatic?
Oh, Haneke?
Yeah.
Yeah. So we use a number. Sorry, you said it very German, and I was like, what is that? Yeah. So we use, I would say, a number of different things. So Pieper, Haneke are two of the big ones that we use. Another one that I love is the Gerhard series that CPH is putting out in those cool red books. That one is probably less. I would say Pieper and Haneke are the two that every one of our students are gonna use, and then going off from there. If that makes sense. Yeah. I know that he did.
Yeah, well, it was really wonderful. He talked a lot about, I guess my question is, like, do you see this in Wels yourself, like, on the ground? He talked about how we're sort of closer than ever and moving in the right direction towards, maybe not towards fellowship anytime soon, but towards that fraternalness, towards getting along again more than we did maybe 50 years ago. Would you say that you see that, like, on the ground in people's opinions of the LCMS?
It's a great question. That's a great question. Yeah, well, I was thinking about my own personal perspective, and Pastor H, I'll just avoid that homework altogether. Pastor H, I know, like, in my seminary days, one of the encouragements that we had is if you do go to a place and there's an LCMS church that's nearby, after you graduate, get your call, move in and get settled, but reach out to them. Just see how they're doing, how they're going. Maybe they've been there longer and they can fill you in on the community, what's been going on, what they've done that works, what doesn't work. So that's what I did, reaching out to him, and he opened up the church, gave me a tour and everything like that. We talked for a while. We just met again before this too, just to talk, which I think is what is really important, is that we do that. I think as pastors especially, but also just as people as well. So I'd like to think that yes. I was trying to think about on a lay level, do I really hear all that much? I guess not. That comes to mind right away. But I do think maybe at a local pastoral level that you have the trickle down of our synod leaderships are having these informal talks. Well, hopefully pastors will. Hopefully our people will as well. Yeah.
I have a practical question about the comment you made about the guy who needed to get preaching classes or whatever.
Oh yeah, the church I grew up at. Yeah.
So I bet every pastor in this room is probably equally frustrated with when we do try to keep Matthew 18 with a brother who's erring in unity, and we try to confront it. There's no authority that actually does anything. So how does that work in the Wels? I just don't know. I mean,
Yeah.
Because this just happened very recently. You call up a guy and say, "Hey, we saw this in your service. This is not in accord with Scripture, confessions, and practice." And you go to your ecclesial supervisor, and he basically says, "Shame on you for having a problem with this guy. We're going to get along." So it's like, what do you do? So how does that work in the Wels?
Yeah, great question. So maybe we have similar structures, I suppose, but obviously you have the parish pastor. So he was here. Every parish pastor is a part of a circuit. So the circuit has a circuit pastor. So first and foremost it would be, okay, I'm going to Reverend Golden. Okay, Reverend Golden is in my circuit. He did something, and I know that. Yeah, sorry, Reverend Golden. I'm going to go to him, like I think everyone would. Talk with him. Hey, brother, how's it going? I noticed this. It seems like this to me. Can you explain? If it is a blatant, outright sin, then maybe it's a little bit different. But given the benefit of the doubt at first, 8th commandment, and talking, if that doesn't work out, and it's clear that there is unconfessed sin or something that's not God glorifying going on, the next call would be to circuit pastor in the area. Circuit pastor would come in. We'd have a meeting together. If that doesn't happen, then it would go right to the district president, the presidium of our district. So that's Pastor Sims. So if I did something wrong, he'd probably just walk across the hallway. What'd you do? And then that goes to a district level, and that's where that more ecclesiastical authority would come in, saying, they would talk with your congregation. If it's like you're not fit for the ministry anymore because of this sin, that would happen with the district president and the congregation to talk through that, because they're the ones who have the right to, remove that call that they have made. So those would kind of be the steps that I would see it happening. I've never really been a part of it. Then we have a board of appeals. So anything that happens as like a synodical decision, there is a board of appeals that pastor can appeal to after the decision to say, hey, I don't think this was looked at fairly. So that's typically how it goes. And I've never heard of anything going beyond that too much.
So your district presidents actually do that?
Yes. Yeah, so Gene or Pastor Sims would travel or go to that place.
Well, that answers everything.
Yeah, that's the DP is the one who's responsible for doing that. Ultimately, they're in.
Hypothetically, if you got a member of your congregation moving to Podunk, Michigan, there's
no Wels church within 1,500 miles, would you tell them it's okay to go to LCMS church or drive the 50 miles every day?
Say at all costs, whether it's 50 or 100, drive us. No, actually, that happened. We had a member who moved to, I think it was South Carolina somewhere. There was no Wels church that was in the area. I just did a quick Google search, what churches are there, and connected with a deacon, LCMS church. He was the one who kind of worked with evangelism outreach, passed on the information to there. So I've done that before. Yeah.
It's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, I would love for someone to stay in the confessional Lutheran world, right? Definitely. I think there and then there, if you're still.
I was just going to follow up on his question coming back there. So, back to your diagram of the pastors and the teachers and the deaconesses.
Sure.
Does that seem to be a little more, say, oversight, or maybe oversight in the Wels as far as that beyond the pastor? Like, if there's a teacher or a deacon in the Wels, that you would have the same type of issue. Would it go up through the same structure?
Yeah, you'd have the extra step of probably like if it's a teacher or a deacon or something like that, a non-pastor, the pastor at that church. So if one of our teachers, something happened, I would go to them and meet with them with the principal or whatever else first, and then circuit pastor if needed. My church is kind of cheating, having the DP as also the pastor. So maybe things, but that's in general, yes, it would be the same thing.
I have the impression that the Wels has much more oversight on the teachings and it's their lives, but the Christian,
The general practice, I guess.
that they're church workers, then the Missouri Synod maybe it is because of the largeness of it, but there's not as much.
I mean, it has to be harder, just logistically. You have more churches, more pastors, more people, more workers. I mean, I would think, just numbers-wise. I don't know. And maybe that's a systems thing. Maybe it's a systems thing. Maybe it's, the Missouri Synod has a different history. A lot of things have happened. And maybe now those things are changing for the better. Yeah, well, I'll stop there. Do we have other questions?
Yeah, I have a question about what is the call process in Wels, and is it the same or is it different? And then kind of what is the definition of line call? Talk about the, in the case of a pastoral holiness that potentially, I guess, you know, if there is any differences kind of how the definition of a call is, because there's a difference in definition of where is the public ministry of the gospel and preach the gospel. Yeah. I'm just kind of curious if you know about or what the definition of the call is.
Yeah, I mean, as far as the Wels would see it, that again, God instituted, and this goes back to like Ephesians 4 verse 11, it is Christ who gave some to be apostles, prophets, pastors, teachers, evangelists. So that's what we look at and say, okay, God created this thing we call the public ministry of the gospel, and then when a group of Christians comes together and says, okay, we need someone to do ministry on our behalf, like we all possess, where do I put them? We all possess the keys, right? We all possess the keys, but now we need someone to use those keys on our behalf in a public setting like worship or teaching. Now that's where the call comes in. The writer to the Hebrews says, no one takes this honor upon himself, kind of referencing back to Aaron the high priest, but they must be called as Aaron was. So if you're going to do public ministry, or if you're going to do representative ministry, something on behalf of other Christians and for them, that's where you need a call, as Scripture lays it out. So a congregation or a group of Christians who comes together, they have the authority to extend a call. So St. Paul's, the church over there, that congregation is the one who extended a call to me, and that call lays out, what do we want you to do? Okay, pastoral ministry, which means we want you to administer the sacraments. We want you to preach, to teach, and go down the line of what the pastor does. Whereas the teacher call is not going to have anything to do with the administration of the sacraments. They are called much more limited, in a much more limited way. So God, through his church, extends a call into the public ministry of the gospel. And there, that's where one person can't terminate my call. So if our congregational president says, and this is probably the same, hey, I don't really like you, he can't terminate my call. The congregation is the one who has that authority. They're the ones who called me. So I don't know if that is different or if that answers your question. I feel like it's probably pretty similar. Yeah, I would say the one thing I've heard differently is that ordination, I think, takes a higher precedent in the LCMS than the Wels. Whereas I would say, why do I have the right to administer the sacraments on a Sunday? I would say, and look back, and Wels pastors would say, well, the congregation has called me to do that. Where I think the LCMS would more say my ordination. No? Correct me.
Call and ordination aren't separate.
What's that?
Call and ordination aren't really meant to be apart.
So maybe here's how I would put it. On call day, when I received my call from St. Paul's, the synod would look at me and say, okay, you're a pastor because you were called. Would the LCMS say, that person who received the call but not yet ordained, are they a pastor?
Why would that be the case?
So it's just that little bit of time. So that's why, yeah, go ahead.
Well, CFW Walker surely would have said that. Yeah, it's in church and ministry, and the thesis on ministry.
Economics,
That
just for you.
the ordination is simply an affirmation of solemn public affirmation of law. That almost has the level of a doctrinal position in the Missouri Synod, although it was part of I believe it was part of a public paper that he gave many years ago. But Kirkendam has this all lined out. And one other thing I was thinking of,
Yeah, go ahead.
if you begin with the office,
Mhm.
you've got tons of stuff in the Bible, in the New Testament about the office, and what an office is and where it comes from, and replicated throughout the Bible. If you start with the call, then that, even in Nineveh, in Tennessee, it would be divided into immediate and immediate. And immediate call would be something that comes through a congregation, or like in Acts 13.
Yep.
An example of this. And so this is why, we would automatically say, let's call, say, a janitor. But in Wisconsin Synod, for a number of years, all of the principals were receiving divine calls. And there's just an understanding that was eventually revolved back in the other direction.
You mean ordained?
Pardon me?
You mean ordained?
I don't know if they were ordained.
Because I know that in the past, I've got a 3-minute thing back there. I know in the past, the LCMS actually rebuked us because for a while, this was before my time, the Wels was ordaining male teachers. Because ordination, as far as a legal status in the government, it gets you the tax status as minister of the gospel. So I think the Wels thought, oh, well, that could be good for our male teachers. But then now there's a confusion of the pastoral office, and what does that mean? That we have male teachers. I know the LCMS was
We
like,
still struggle with that too.
I don't know if you should do that.
Commissioned and ordained. Commissioned ministers.
Sure.
Ordained ministers. So we struggle with the same thing with different words.
But yeah, the reason maybe it's just a nomenclature thing, but our teachers, our principals are all divinely called. That's what we would say. They have a divine call that's extended to them through the congregation.
Would you
So.
say, do they have a divine call to a particular office?
Yeah, so the call lays out the scope of their ministry. So they are called to be a teacher or a deacon or a Sunday school teacher receives a call to teach. Limited scope. So a call defines the scope of your ministry. It's kind of how we talk about it in the Wels. That's why teachers wouldn't be administering the sacraments. But when I was a vicar, I was called to, underneath my bishop, do that because it was part of my call to administer the sacraments on Sunday then too. But our teacher, our principal, they're not called to do that. So yeah, does that make sense? Kinda. Yeah, so call, when we talk about call defines the scope of your ministry. Yeah.
I know in the LCMS, the calls come directly from the seminary. Does that work the same way in the book?
Like from when you graduate. So we have 12 districts. When you go from the seminary, the district presidents come together and they have all the lists of the vacancies that they have. They come together and then they say, where do these gentlemen fit best? We have a whole interview process, so they come together like that. It's a great question.
Just real quick, do the Wels have issues getting pastors for their church if you have vacancy?
Oh yeah, teacher and pastor. And a big part of that is the recognition that it's not a called worker shortage, it's a amount of churches. We actually just heard a statistic that in the Wels, we currently have the highest proportion in our history of called workers, so that'd be pastors, teachers, deacons, to lay people. The ratio of that is the highest it's ever been, but yet we have 100-some pastoral vacancies and even more teacher vacancies. Well, we have a lot of churches that are within 10 minutes of each other that are now dual tri-parishes. And so one of the things that we've been talking about is, are we being good stewards of our resource of called workers? And is there a reason why maybe those churches should merge together and have one pastor who oversees them? Because that would solve a lot of those vacancy problems for the pastor side, but that's just one part of it. Anything else? Yeah, I think I have like 1 minute, so.
Real quick, in our nomenclature,
Yeah.
those offices of teachers, commission ministers, that kind of thing, they're called auxiliary to the pastoral.
Yeah.
How would you call it?
Yeah, so we would say that all of them, teacher, deacon, or pastor, they are public ministers of the gospel, but they have the scope of their call, what they are called to do by the congregation is different. So what a teacher is called to do, different than a pastor. But all public ministers of the gospel. A call, yep.
It's not the same as the calls of the pastoral office.
Yeah, not the same.
Nomenclature.
Yeah. I think we end up in the same place, but the route we use to get there is different in a lot of ways. But we can talk afterwards. I see you shaking your head. Yeah. But I think I have to end because of time. So thank you guys. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me here. I'll be around to ask questions too after the closing stuff too. Are we going up to the